Record. All right, thanks everyone for coming to the second data webinar. I appreciate you showing up for the second one. You get bonus points because I know right now how packed you are. But I designed this webinar for two things. One, I wished I would have had this webinar about 10 years ago. And two, for those of you who are unsure of where you need to be thinking with your star data and plans, hopefully this will help you get some kind of bearing. I need to go in this direction. There's that data analysis paralysis. And I've been talking to principals who, with the data they're looking at right now, they still just don't know what direction to go to. So hopefully this will help you get a direction and maybe get you a couple of steps down the road. So, hello, I am someone who can help. And I've got a bunch of people on the call too that I'll introduce at the end that can help you also. But hopefully I can help. Again, one of my favorite quotes is that you fall to the level of your systems. I'm a system man. I think of systems in my personal and professional life. I swear by them, drive my wife crazy, but I think systems run the world. At times, I think in our jobs, this is what we feel like we're doing, is spinning that many plates and trying to make it work. I would prefer something this calm. I still don't like the number here, but if I have a choice between this one or that one, I will take this one every day. Now, as I think about systems, when I go walk on a campus and work with a principal, I look at drop off in the morning as a system, breakfast as a system, drop or pick up in the afternoon as a system, how the cafeteria running is a system. I think of all of those things as a system. And if your discipline is out of control, to me, you have a system in place. It's just not getting you the results you're wanting. Or if your parents love you, then you have a system in place and you're getting the results that you want. It's probably your communication system. Many new principals just don't get this understanding of dismissals is just complete crap. Don't know what to do about it. Well, if you look at it systematically, let's start looking at steps to take. Or if I just can't get into classrooms, well, you must not have a system of getting into classrooms. So let's work on a system to get you into classrooms. Does that make sense? All right, so if you haven't adopted this quote as one of your top 10, think about it this week. Maybe it'll get into your top 10. Reviewing last week, the steps I take for really any data, but August 11th is coming up. And here are 5 easy steps that you can imprint in your mind to mine it wherever it's going to be. And a lot of you, it's going to be in Eduphoria or on Data Suite. Formatting it so that you can analyze it. Because, it comes out of Eduphoria all messed up into Excel. So if you know how to format it, that's a whole other skill set, but format it, then really analyze it, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and then communicate what you found, and then decide what to do with it. And remember, you don't have to make all the decisions. You got some smart people around you. You've got your central office, and then you've got us. So call on us if you need to. I hope some of you thought about this graphic from last Monday and then maybe added some depending on your job and your role in the organization. Did anybody think of anything I didn't put on this chart? Don't tell me I thought of all of it. Or maybe I did. Maybe I did. I don't think so. But anyway, I want you to keep this graphic in your head as you move along the year. Now, when we talk about star, here are just some of the things that you want to dive into, some of the areas of analysis. And I'm going to show you this in two different ways. Hopefully it'll get some motion into your decision making. So we talked about star data specifically, and it's probably going to be an edge for you. DMAC on data. There's a couple of other ones out there. If you can get it into Excel, well, this was my steps, getting it into Excel, analyze it, having a conversation. And then I was a principal for 17 years. And I had a mentor at probably my third year as a principal who taught me really how to dig into data. And over the years, I've just refined my process so that when I left, I thought I was on top of my data game. So you're talking about 10, 15 years of really making my process better and better and better. And this is it. This is what I thought made me better than most when it comes to analyzing data. It's a chart. Now, I've made a video of this on my YouTube channel, Data 101, and it breaks it down a little bit more, but let me show you that over on the left would be the different grade level or subjects that are going to be assessed. So third grade math, third grade reading, fourth grade math, fourth grade reading, so forth. I would look at it. What this chart does is keep me on track from the first test to analyze to the 15th, because some of y'all have a lot of assessments, especially secondary. It would keep me focused from my first test to my last test. Because if not, you'll start really working it and analyze, let's say Algebra 1. You're going to look how you did versus the district, how you did overall as a campus, by teacher, by sub-pop. You're going to be digging into it. Well, by the time you get to English 2, you've had to interview somebody, you've had to write someone up, you've had to blah, 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 blah. And by the time you get to the last test to analyze, you've lost focus or you've lost energy. And so this thing, let me show you. This chart keeps you focused. Look at this. From the first to the last. That's what it looks like at the end. Here's another one. Yes, from the first to the end. Let me stop and share my. So in the end, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like this. You're going to have notes all over it, but you're going to go from the first assessment all the way to the last, making sure you cover all of the information. So yes, it is a simple looking chart, but I'm telling you, it's going to keep you focused. And you're going to add your own titles to the top. And what this conveys, what this correlates to, and let me show you a specific example, is it's going to be, for me, an Excel workbook with the tabs down here at the bottom being the column headings up here. So it's that chart, and here are the tabs down at the bottom. You with me? Bloomer, give me a thumbs up. You with me? Okay. So if I'm looking for this information, and it's going to look like this in the end, let me show you what you can do with it. Let me go into that document. So I created a demo document. So here are my tabs down at the bottom. So overall, I'm looking at how we did, and this is an interim assessment. And if you look, my white sub-pop, 57% versus my overall 78, which I'm looking for outliers and patterns and things that raise questions. But that 57%, 50% of them had the probability of achieving meets or masters. And then 33 had the probability of achieving masters on the assessment. So just looking at it in that view gives me a lot of questions about what's going on with my sub-pops. And then looking down here, look at this. This is teacher by teacher. So there's 3 teachers. One was at 70%, one's at 75, one's at 91. Now at my first campus, I had between 6 and 9 teachers. Every assessment, there's going to be one teacher over here, 20% way off the mark, or 30%. And we'd ask the question, what's going on in that class? And there would be the inclusion class, or that's a brand new teacher, or whatever. There was always a reason. When I get to my second campus, I do the same process. And there were discrepancies maximum by 5 points. I had never seen as consistent data in my life as I had at this second campus. Now, the second campus was the highest performing school in the district. And when I got down to this with the teachers going, look, guys, I've never seen consistent data like this. What's going on? And as we talked, there were no excuses. There were no reasons. The inclusion class had a second teacher in there. The youngest teacher, they gave her extra support. The team made sure that the data was consistent. It was mind-blowing. I'd never seen that before. And I'd been a principal already for 9 years. So if you're analyzing your data and there's a discrepancy among teachers, and someone is saying, well, this is the reason why that data is so off, or this is the reason, I recommend you push back. The high performing schools have consistent data. And if you're not looking at it this detailed, you're not going to find that. Look at this on the SEs. Okay. Over here, I always look at readiness standards versus supporting standards. Readiness standards are going to be tested more. So I'm going to be looking at them a little bit more detailed. We've got some readiness standards in the 20s and the teens. You can't have that. Now, many of you have districts that are going to give you data already. They're going to send it to you. You're going to get a ton of data by the state, but are they breaking it down by SEs? And I usually have GT over on the left because I want to know how the GT kids score too. But is this telling me we have a curriculum problem? Or do we have a scope and sequence problem?
Yeah, and that would be the same thing. So there were 2. So I sent you 2.
Who has the mic on?
And the one that needs to be done first is
Pam, can you mute her?
the one I'm working on.
Okay. So I'm looking at Do we have a curriculum problem here? Scope and sequence, I'm trying to figure that out, but if you're not going down to the SE level, you're not going to figure that out. You're not going to know you have a problem. Okay, historical SEs. Look at this. This one readiness standard hasn't made it out of the 30s. That's a problem. I'm looking by all students. These kids who are scoring, just knocking it out of the park, they're not identified as GT. Do we have an identification issue that we need to get to? So as you look at it in different ways, and if you follow that chart, you're going to look at it different ways. You're going to find things that might need some attention. Here are my special pops. I always break it down by special pops. So I want to know how my EB kids are doing, SPED, GT, and 504, always. I'm always looking for my populations because these are programs. And if my programs are not working, I got to make some adjustments. If you go low to high, it's a great, look at that. I messed that up. That should have been that, not that. There. So looking at how many kids we're talking about. And when you're having a conversation with your staff, visualizing it this way helps. What about students historically, especially when we're talking about growth? 75% of schools are dependent on the growth. So here, if you're looking at historical by student, you can see which kids didn't pass last year, and you can pick up points for this year. And then always do red flags, kids who failed, kids who didn't meet progress, and then students who failed and didn't meet progress. Those are 3 categories that we gotta keep hold of. Now, if you're working on this chart, you're gonna find all of those things to look for if you're working your chart. Just work your chart. It's gonna get you into a document. All your data is gonna be in one place. Then you can have some great conversations with your staff. And a lot of times I go in, because I'm not a curriculum guy, I'm a data guy. I'm gonna find patterns, I'm gonna find outliers, I'm gonna find things that I don't know the answer to, but we need to figure them out. But if you're not, or if you don't have someone digging into the data this deeply, you're not going to find all of those questions to ask. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Any questions about it so far? Please tell me if I'm moving too fast. Nope.
Hey, John, what is tutoring strips?
Okay, in Eduphoria, one of the standard drop-down menus is tutoring strips. And what that gives you is item by student and item by item, which kids missed which questions, so that you can group those kids together. It's a standard drop-down. Now, I know Brandy has 500 of those for y'all, but it's one of the standard ones that Eduphoria loads in. So you are looking at that, all right. And some of these I combine, we've got some small districts that they're the only elementary in the district. So I combine some so I don't have so many tabs. And you'll find your own categories that you really want to dig into. Okay, let's keep going. So I took a screenshot, and this only goes down to the S's of how many documents I received from STAR 2019. So there's going to be a ton of documents heading your way, whether you like it or not. And if you don't have a structured way to handle all of this data, you're either going to get overwhelmed by it or you're not going to look at it. So think about how you can delegate, organize, get a handle on the data that's coming your way. And on August 11th, everybody's going to be freaking out about the letter grade or certain things. What I encourage you to do is to have a plan of what you're going to do with the data and how you're going to have conversations around the data. Because in the end, we got to make adjustments to improve for this school year. Now, most of you are familiar with Lead Forward's quintile report. When you export that, it's a PDF, so you can't manipulate it. I don't like that. So I rank order, then I make my own quintiles. They're not as even, as pretty as the Lead Forward ones, but they look like this. So your lowest performing student is in their top right, your highest performing top left, bottom right. So last webinar, I talked to you all about visualizing data. Here's an example of visualizing data. So if I have an assessment and I have lowest to highest, let's just talk about subpops. So where would you assume your GT kids where would you expect your GT kids to show up on this document? Top on the right side, right? So if you do this and you highlight certain kids, they're going to show up. So here are the GT kids. They're in basically where I would expect them to be. But let's talk about other subpops. Okay. GT, your special ed, your African American, depending on your district. You can pick any subpop. Maybe your white students are the ones that you're looking for. So we'll look at this. So here are my special ed students. I don't like seeing special ed students in the majority of the left column. To me, we're giving them a ton of resources. Do we need to go back to art and change their accommodations? Remember, there's accommodations to learn the material and accommodations to show us they learn the material. Do we need to adjust either of those? So here's a whole conversation of just visualizing your data. No names, just where do they fall? Okay, what about your EB students? Maybe you're the lowest scoring just arrived from Central America. Okay, so what's the plan? But I don't want the majority of my EB students in quadrant 1. And I just put on this example African-American students. It could be white, it could be Hispanic, doesn't matter. Which subpop are you going to be, do you need to monitor the most? So just looking at your data in a different way. Number one, take the names off. This would be a great conversation with your staff. Okay, I ran into this early in my career with that mentor of mine. Of the kids who have already been retained, how are they doing? Number one, are you monitoring those kids? And number two, what's happening with them? And to me, if these kids are not growing, that's on us. We got to do something about that. How many of you are actually monitoring the kids who have already been retained? Maybe that's something you want to consider this year. And have a shepherd just look after those kids. Okay, read this for a second. Okay, about 5 years ago, I took a group of leaders and we went to Google, and the Google Executive Briefing Center. We were the first and only first district they had ever brought into this. So it's the best speakers at Google speaking to a school district leadership team. And they put this up on the screen and we're like, wow. They take complete ownership of the problem. And discussion at the dinner table that night I thought was pretty hefty of, do we take, as the leaders of the campus, do we take ownership of the problems, whatever problems they are? And when this comes to in context of your data, no matter what the data shows, are you taking ownership of that data? This was huge discussion for our leadership team that we had in California. And again, if you're thinking about our kids, and I love this graphic because it represents all of our kids. Our kids are not the problem, in my opinion. We are the leaders. We're the ones who get to design the solutions. We're the ones who are hiring teachers. It's our problem to make sure our kids get what they need. And I don't want to put I don't want to put STAR as the end all and be all. But if you triangulate that with your benchmarks or with TPRI or what MAP or whatever assessment you're using, are we meeting the needs of our kids? To me, it comes down to four things. If a student's not performing, it's a motivation issue, an intervention issue, instruction issue, or a relationship issue. Bloomer wrote about this in his blog this morning about the relationship piece. I think that's on us to create those relationships. Not for a student to come to us and say, hey, I needed an adult in my life and I need a mentor. No, that's on us. So I think you can break it down into these 4 categories. You might have your own. I think it's these 4. And being the chief communication officer of the campus, I think you got to get really good at knowing your data so that you can communicate it. And if things are going great, make sure you communicate those too. The examples I gave last week were start with your office staff, practice on them, and then practice on your leadership team, and then practice on your teams or your departments, and then the whole staff meeting, and then your PTA and your community leaders. So that's how you can practice your message. Okay, at Rackspace, this is hanging in the halls, maybe 3 or 4 places. And I think it applies to education also. How many of our teachers don't want this? But the winning team on an inspiring mission, I think the inspiring mission has to be articulated by the principal, by the superintendent, by the leaders. And if you're part of the leadership team, you're the one communicating that inspiring mission. But here's one of the rubs, right? How do you keep morale high and have high expectations? I think when you know your data, then you can explain the adjustments needed based on the data, makes it less personal. You can rally the troops where the data is showing success and focus on the areas that need to be adjusted. Right. Personally, I don't like to be micromanaged. I love freedom. Love to know where the boundaries are. Love to know the gray area. But I do not like to be micromanaged. And so I think our teachers are in this area too. We talk about empowering teachers, but I think if you create systems, then you manage the systems, and your rock star teachers are going to appreciate that. I tell my teachers, if they just know their content, then all you have to, if you know your content, all you have to learn are your kids. You're not trying to learn content and kids at the same time. We have a lot of new teachers, and they're going to be learning content and their kids. So I think we've got to, as leaders, got to figure out, okay, how do we not overwhelm them with learning the content, learning the kids, and learning how to teach? That's a lot to ask for those brand new teachers. If you have systems in place of mentoring, and not just, hey, your team leader or your department chair is your mentor. No, really, do they have a mentor? Are they meeting with them regularly? What are the topics? What's the agenda? And if you don't have a mentoring program, let me know. We can work with you. Okay, when it comes down to it, there's not a lot of academic learning time. Because we've got the calendar, but then got kids who are going to take absences for whatever, either sickness or they're in ag, they're in golf. They're not going to be there. Then you've got interruptions, schedule changes. So keeping the teachers focused on how precious the academic learning time is, I think is something that needs to be communicated as the chief communication officer. Okay, I created this and I'm proud of it. Been looking for this for about 10 years. So as the principal, you're like the DJ. You're the only one who can turn these dials. Now you've got resources, which be personnel, special ed, general ed, your paras. You're the only one who can allocate who goes what and who's doing what. Your leadership team is extremely important to you on advising you on this. You're the only one that can allocate money, whether it be title, your budgeted funds, your campus funds that you generate at the campus. You're the one in charge of the master calendar, the master schedule, what interruptions take place. Working with the campus last year, where the office staff had free reign of how many times they could use the intercom to call students to do, it was nuts. So getting a handle on how many times a classroom is interrupted and by what, that comes back to you. And then community support, donations and volunteers and PTA, that's you, the chief communication officer. You're the only one who can turn these dials and how far you're going to turn them. So keep that in mind. And yes, I know you're impressed by my graphic. Thank you. You can put your comments in the chat. Okay, so you got to get really clear about what you want and how to get there. And I think from any principal I work with from now on, I'm going to create this board for them. I read a book called The Way of the Seal, and I'm going to talk to you about it in a minute. But from that, my youngest created this board for me, which I put up in my office, and it helped me two ways. It helped me get clear, and then it helped me communicate. So let me just explain it, and then I'm going to zoom in, because I had some pictures in my photos that, thank goodness, I kept. So if you look at it, it's the focus plan. So what are you going to do for the whole year? Bottom left, what you're going to do in the next quarter, because your staff can hang with you for about 12 weeks. A 12-week initiative is much easier to handle than a full year initiative. Then bottom right is the week. Top right would be the events of that month that are going to help you get what you want for the end for the year. So let's focus in. So for this picture, the vision was to become an A school. My 3 goals is I wanted 3 distinctions and I wanted 97% attendance. And this is after reviewing all the data. Back then we got data a little bit earlier than now. A new habit the staff needed to get was be committed to systems. And so forth. So anytime someone came into my office, I could have that conversation because it's going to be right there in my office. You have a discussion with one of your team leaders or your master teachers or someone on your leadership team, they give you great ideas like, oh yeah, that's a must do. We're going to do it right there. Or maybe that's a new habit that we need to have as a staff. Quarterly, breaking things down quarterly helped my staff tremendously. So it's a 12-week initiative, not a full year thing where a principal comes in and we're going to do this for a full year. How many teachers have you heard going, well, I'll wait this one out? Or here's the initiative of this year, or here's the initiative of this principal. But if you break it down into, this is what we're going to do for the next 3 months. We're going to create some plans for these kids. Make sense? I hope so. Here's another quarterly plan. We were going to teach growth because our kids didn't even know what growth meant. We needed to teach it academically, in music, in PE. Here are the targets we were going to meet. The new habit was to design effective plans because we were designing plans, but we were not really looking at how effective those plans were. So here are 2 books I highly recommend. The Way of the Seal and The Advantage. Now, The Way of the Seal is going to help you get focused personally. Advantage is going to help you get focused as an organization. And in The Advantage, Pat Lencioni, he has, I think, 10 videos on YouTube. They're about 3 minutes each. If you don't trust me on this being a great book, watch the videos and that'll convince you. But I highly recommend these 2 books. For some of you, you're going to have to do things you've never done before. Some of you may need to maintain pace, but you need to know the data to know what to protect to maintain pace. But some of you are going to have to do things you've never done before. And then some of you are going to have to change the way you articulate your message. There may be graphics like this. It may be great videos. Man, I love me some great videos. It may be you schedule more individual conferences or small group instead of big staff meetings. But if you really want the people you lead to understand the data, you're gonna have to know the data and then figure out what your team needs in terms of visualizing it, articulating it, understanding what resources you're going to need to adjust based on the data. That all comes back to you. I believe confident, proactive leaders make better decisions. The more confident you are, the feedback you get, better decisions you're going to make. If you haven't looked at my YouTube channel yet, please do. This last one, Data Analysis 101, has a lot of information for you that I think will walk you through the process a little bit slower if need be. We have another webinar next Monday on Data Suite is going to be presenting during that webinar. And when I was talking to them and we were planning it, they came up with about 5 things I didn't even know on Data Suite could do. So I'm excited to watch that webinar. If you haven't put me in your phone or on a sticky note or something, please do so. Put my number there. Find me if you need me. And then let me stop recording for a second.